So, Michael, tell everybody, what's a tariff and what impact is the trade war with China having on American consumers?
Tariffs are sort of our oldest form of taxes. They go back to the days of the Revolutionary War and before and shortly after. It used to be the easiest way for a government to raise money, just put a tax on any imported good. And that money would be collected here by Americans, but the goods that were taxed would be foreign in their origin. And so, in theory, it sounds great. You get to raise money for the government. The only producer that's in some way affected is one that's overseas. And of course, it is a way now to be punitive towards an overseas competitor that you don't think is being fair in economic terms or that you think is being disruptive in security terms. We've applied them, therefore, to Iran, to North Korea, to Russia. These are usually over security threats or over human rights abuses. But of course, President Trump is now becoming famous for applying them in trade disputes.
I guess the question is, do tariffs work? And as somebody who's looking at military conflict all the time, how do you kind of figure this into the risk factoring?
Well, they can work. And the broader issue or category of instruments that we could call sanctions, they can work, but you've got to have your expectations in check because it ultimately requires changing the psychology and the calculus of someone else. You're not physically changing their policy. You are trying to persuade them. And depending on how powerful your tool is and how appropriate it is to the problem at hand, you may or may not get the outcome you want. I'm interested in a category of problems in this book, the Senkaku Paradox, where Russia or China does a military strike of some kind, a probing attack against a very small island in the Pacific, against a tiny little piece of Estonia or Latvia, NATO countries in Eastern Europe.
In the example that you point to, in the Senkaku Islands, it's China lays claim to this. Japan also lays claim to this. How do tariffs play into this potential situation, especially when we're already imposing tariffs on China at this point? How does that weaken or strengthen what you would plan on doing in a situation like this?
Yeah, it does make it more complicated. Just a quick word of background. Senkakus are uninhabited. They're tiny. Both Japan and China claim them. The United States doesn't even have a position on whose islands they should be, but we recognize that Japan currently administers them, whatever that means, because nothing happens there. And therefore, we apply the U.S.-Japan treaty to those islands, and we say that we are sort of on record committed to defend them in conjunction with Japan if they are attacked. In other words, this could be sort of a doomsday script for winding up in inadvertent war against China.
It happened World War I started such a way, right?
Yeah, sort of equally insignificant stakes on their own immediate terms, but they bring in broader ramifications. You couldn't just watch China grab these things and do nothing. But if they happen to sneak 50 people ashore one night, do you want to really, bomb those positions as your main response? So in that case, I think that's where tariffs and economic sanctions more generally could be very effective.